The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Arctic Fantasy. Get up to 1K in the deposit match with Arctic Fantasy with promo code SGPN. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It's currently Thursday night, July 10th, around 9 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm always Scott Reichel, once again, going solo for this pod. Time to break down the men's semifinal matches taking place in Wimbledon, taking place on Friday. Before we get into that, though, a brief, I'd say, explanation for why we didn't have an episode for the last day or two. I was traveling. I was supposed to do an episode for the women's semis. Apologies that didn't happen. I did not quit on breaking down women's matches. Unfortunately, though, was not able to record. Didn't have the time, so I had to skip it, and we will be doing the women's final in a day or so, so keep that in mind. We are here to break down the men's matches taking place on Friday, so I'll do that for this show. Now, before we get into the actual recap of the quarterfinals on the men's side, a reminder that you can find all the picks and podcasts for SGPN for free by checking out the SGPN feeds on Spotify and Apple, and also check out the app, free download. So once again, check out the SGPN app on the app stores, check out the SGPN feed on Spotify or Apple for all the free picks and podcasts that we have on the network. Anyway, starting off with the actual recap of the quarters. For the men's side, for the lock and dog, decent episode, not great. Did pick up a loss for the lock, as we had the Djokovic match under half a tiebreak at minus 120. Bit annoying, as Joker was serving for the first set, choked it, had a set point anyway, didn't convert that either, and the first set went to a tiebreak. But then again, you ended up seeing a 7-5 set later on in the match, because Joker broke towards the end of that set. So I can't really call it an insane bad beat, but Joker having the first set on a platter and then fumbling it was pretty annoying, but pick up a loss there for the lock. Nice win, though, for the dogs. We had Fritz to win, and both players won a set. The Fritz special at plus 118 got there as he won the first two sets. Then he had a bit of an injury, no-showed the third set. He bounced back, and he won the fourth set in a breaker. But either way, ended up splitting the lock and dog picks. I'll try to get a sweep here in the semifinal matches. Now, for the actual recap of the quarters as a whole, not too much drama. And in fact, you had 0-5 setters. So Fritz beat Kashanov in 4, set up before that Fritz was coasting. Then he had an injury, felt like a blister, I believe, was impacting his movement. And you ended up seeing Kashanov dominate the third set. He also went up a break in the fourth set early. Then Fritz got back into form, served bombs again, had a ridiculous tiebreak when it comes to serving. And you ended up seeing him win the breaker. So either way, nice job by Fritz winning in 4. As for the other matchup, Alcaraz killed Norrie. Thought he would. He ended up winning the match easily. He only dropped 8 games in the match. Norrie, look, good effort, making it to the quarters. I don't think he's that great of a tennis player. But either way, he gave it a good run. He had no firepower at all, and Alcaraz killed him. So we thought he would. Thought that it was a bad matchup for Norrie. I feel like it was pretty entertaining watching Alcaraz just look like his old self again. After dropping sets left and right, he finally flipped the switch and took care of an easy opponent in very convincing fashion. And I feel like it was pretty embarrassing for Jarry, because Jarry could not break Norrie's serve in 5 full sets of tennis, and Alcaraz broke the serve in 2 of the first 3 return games. Yeah, Norrie was trying to do the slice serve out wide. He has no firepower at all. It felt like batting practice for Alcaraz, and he dominated. So once again, really not any drama whatsoever, as Norrie ended up losing in straight sets. For the matches that we ended up seeing on Wednesday, you saw Sinner beat Shelton in straight sets. We thought Shelton maybe would keep it interesting, with Sinner having a bit of an elbow issue. Yeah, he looked fine. Nothing else really add there. Every Shelton-Sinner match is the same, as it looks close. Shelton might find a way to win a set, and he never does. Sinner was able to win again in straight sets. He has a massive, I'd say, set streak against Shelton at the moment. And yeah, Sinner just looked really good. Did not get broken in the entire match. Shelton served well, too. Second serve, though, he got destroyed. He only won 41% of the second serve points. Sinner, by comparison, won 67, and there we go. So Sinner won in straight sets. Thought it might be a competitive matchup. It was not, and instead, the only match of the day that did feature 4+ sets was Caboli, taking the first set against Djokovic, then eventually lost the next 3 sets. Joker took a bit of a scary spill there in the final game. He got up, he ended up serving it out, he got the job done. Caboli played well, nothing really against him. The Sun was playing some I'd say, tricks on the players on one side of the court because it felt like there was a certain amount of glare and you were staring directly into the sun from one direction. So it did feel like the return games were not as crisp as usual for Djokovic because you couldn't really see anything for about 40 plus minutes on one side of the court. But still, Kaboli played pretty well, won the first set. The Joker flipped the switch, was able to win. Pretty rough missed volley there by Kaboli facing break point towards the end of that fourth set. It was a gimme, and he just shanked it into the net. But either way, the point is Djokovic got the job done, thought he would, and we ended up getting the semis that we thought we were going to get, which was the three usual suspects and Fritz. So once again, not too much of a shock for the actual outrights. To get into the recap of the outrights that we have for the event. First quarter, yeah, we had Sinner, a minus 270. Nothing really shocking there. Second quarter, we had Djokovic, plus 105. Nothing really shocking there. Third quarter, we had Zverev at 310. They didn't get there, of course, with Medvedev at 4-1. And we had Fritz at 550. So a nice win there for the 550 for the third quarter. And fourth quarter, we ended up having, of course, Alcaraz once again by himself with nobody else near him. So Alcaraz at minus 350, whatever. So once again, the most predictable, I'd say, Grand Slam theme here continues, which is blindly picking Sinner, Alcaraz, and Djokovic to make the semis and go from there. Because it feels like on the men's tour, we saw it in the first couple rounds, there are a bunch of seeded players who you question how they're even seeded in the first place because they lose to anybody at any given time. And with all the upsets we saw early on, we saw chalk pretty much dominate the backstages of the event. So now we have the three usual guys, Sinner, once again, Alcaraz and Djokovic, and Fritz is here. Good for Fritz, who ended up winning the title in Eastbourne right before Wimbledon, and he was able to once again make it out of a pretty tricky quarter. Of course, helped out that Fritz did not have to face off against Medvedev and Zverev because they both lost immediately into the first round. But still, point is, nice job by Fritz at 550 to get the job done there into the third quarter. But we swept the quarters for the men's side. For the outrights, yeah, we kept going with chalk again. Alcaraz plus 120 and Sinner at 2-1. There you go. So once again, in reinventing nothing on the men's tour. If you want creativity, try out the women's tour. For men's tour stuff, just bet chalk in the Grand Slams, and usually it works out. Really feels like Nadal and Federer again in the mid-2000s, where you're just picking them against each other in basically the finals of every Grand Slam. And you're probably right. That's what it feels like at the moment. Now, Djokovic is trying to hang around. We'll see how he does against Sinner on Friday. But it really does feel like that same sense of two-way dominance from two guys on tour. And nobody else has a chance. Now, Djokovic, I know, is the GOAT, best player of all time. And back in the mid-2000s, he just wasn't at the level of Federer and Nadal yet. The argument is now that Djokovic is older. He's not at the level of Sinner and Alcaraz at this stage in his career, which sets up the same dynamic that we saw from Federer and Nadal about 20 years ago. And I feel like we're back to where we started. So once again, you have Alcaraz and Sinner, who are the favorites to advance to the final again. We'll see what happens, but either way, looking forward to the matches taking place on Friday. Checking out the actual comment section quickly. I see Ian stopping by, I see Johnson stopping by, I see John stopping by, Adam as well, and Anthony. What's up, guys? Definitely nice to see you again. Once again, that's going to wrap it up for the actual recap. Nothing else to add because it was pretty chalky for the sake of the quarters. Now, I was going to break down the women's as well for the recap. I'll save that actually for the final because we saw, of course, the semis take place today. I'll save my breakdowns and my recap of the semis for the women's final episode taking place tomorrow. Anyway, time to move on into the actual preview of the matches and the semis taking place on Friday. For that, the reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is Circa. So you're still hosting the Circa Million Circuit Survivor contest. You can enter at Circa, and a reminder, it's $21 million guaranteed prizes. There's no rake. So the entries go above the guarantee. The extra money will be added to the prize pool. Circa Million, pick 5 teams ATS each week. Go for the Ultimate Sweat Circuit Survivor, or even enter the Circa Rendissimo, a $100,000 Circuit Survivor contest. The searches are in person, Circa Sportsbook in Nevada. And a reminder, you can sign up in Vegas and play from anywhere with the help of SGPN's official proxy. Go to footballcontest.com. Use the code SGP to get $50 off your proxy fees. We're also brought to you by MyBookie, because they're available in a ton of locations. Use MyBookie.ag to bet on MLB, Bet on tennis, bet on WNBA, bet on golf, etc. Football as well for college and for the NFL. And a reminder, use crypto fast payouts, easy deposit, and sign up for an account. Use code SGPN to get a special 100% match of the 1K. Terms and conditions by Big G, promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the recap of the men's quarters. Time to move on into the breakdown of the two matches taking place on Friday. Starting off with the first match on the card, you have Alcaraz against Fritz. Now, by no shock to anybody, Alcaraz, massive favorite. He's minus 520. Fritz is plus 400 for the spread, minus 5.5 for Alcaraz, plus 5.5 for Fritz. The over-unders at 37.5 games. Set spread, you have Alcaraz in straight sets at plus 130. You have Fritz to win a set at minus 170. And the minus 1.5 sets by comparison, Alcaraz minus 1.5 sets minus 230. Fritz plus 1.5 sets plus 175. The over 3.5 sets is minus 145. The over 4.5 sets is plus 284. Faced off twice in the past. One was last year and one was 2 years ago. Alcaraz 2-0. Never dropped a set. Faced off in Miami 2023, won in straight sets. Faced off in the Laver Cup last year, Alcaraz won 6-3, 6-2, 7-5. So Fritz has not really been that dangerous towards Alcaraz, but Fritz has gotten better. And on grass with that serve, he can be dangerous if the serve is on point. We saw Struff, for example, win a set against Alcaraz by serving and volleying and via spots. We can see maybe Fritz find a way onto the scoreboard instead of getting blown out like Norrie just did. Now, for the actual path of both players, Alcaraz has been good, been dropping sets, but he put his best foot forward last match because he won straight sets against Norrie. Now, for the matches so far, beat Fognini in 5 sets. The last match Fognini ever played, actually retired, and he was in the players' booth for Caboli cheering him on. So I didn't see Fognini in the actual center court, not playing, of course, but still. Fognini, fun career, and I feel like I'm going to miss him more than other people because I thought he was entertaining back in his prime. But either way, he retired, and Alcaraz was pushed to the brink against him in his final career match. Beat Tarvit in straight sets into the second round, Struff in 4, Rublev in 4, and Norrie in straight sets. So he has been dropping sets. He's been still winning, but it has not been a dominant showing by the two-time champion on a regular basis, but I guess survive and advance is the name of the game, so not that big of a deal. As for Fritz, similar boat. He's been winning, but not convincingly, as he has dropped at least one set in every match, except for the match against Thompson, where Thompson quit with an injury midway through the second set. But he ended up beating Perricard in 5, beat Diallo in 5, beat Fekina in 4, should have been 3, punted away that third set, rebounded well, and killed him in the fourth set. Beat Thompson in a set and a half, and beat Khachanov in 4. Now, I will point out the Fritz path has been very difficult compared to Alcaraz. Alcaraz, I know Rublev can be tricky, and I know Norrie made it to a semi here before. In reality, though, Struff has been really bad for the last year. Tarvit's an unknown. Fognini was about to retire, and that still turned into a marathon match. A pretty easy path for Alcaraz. For Fritz, though, it's been a pretty tough road every single match. Even Thompson is decent on grass, and he was injured, so pretty fortunate for Fritz, but still, not really any let-ups in the path for Fritz. And you could argue that could help him because he's battle-tested. He had a day off entering, once again, this matchup. So maybe the blisters will heal, and you'll see him look pretty sharp here. But Fritz has impressed me so far in the tournament because he had a very tough road to get to the semis. Now, will it help him in this case? No. I think we all know Alcaraz should win. If Fritz wins, it will be an absolute shock to everybody if he wins. I don't see him winning, simply put. I just think that Alcaraz is too good for Fritz. Fritz's movement might be compromised at some point in the matchup. Alcaraz has the speed, the court coverage, the firepower, and Fritz still has some, I'd say, momentary lapses in concentration, and he can punt away sets like we saw against once again, Fekina, and we saw him have a health issue in the third set against Khachanov. I do think you're looking at a spot where Alcaraz should win. That's never in doubt. The question is, do I think Fritz can actually win a set? I think he can. I actually think he can. The fact is, Struff was able to serve enough bombs to neutralize, to some degree, the Alcaraz return game. Alcaraz's serve has not been amazing in the event. The second serve's been pretty weak. I think Fritz can jump on it on a couple of occasions. But for the actual matchup itself, I think Fritz does win a set here. If Alcaraz buries him, I would not be shocked either. But I do think Fritz has the game, and I do think with the foot concerns, the extra time off might help him deal with that to limit the potential, I'd say, risk at play for him punting a set like he did against Kashanov and potentially being out of sorts against Alcaraz. I think Alcaraz wins. If he ramps it up, sure, it is what it is. There's no value on it besides straight sets for Alcaraz, but I do think with him dropping as many sets as we've seen so far in the event, I will give Fritz a certain amount of credit, and I will give him a courtesy set. I think Alcaraz wins in four. I see Adam mentioning it. Alcaraz in four is at plus 240. I don't mind that. Pretty straightforward. Similar to the Rublev match and the Struff match. Alcaraz wins. In hindsight, nobody cares. But Fritz gets to say, I won something. And that moral victory, that I'd say silver lining, is good enough in this case. I don't mind Alcaraz in four at plus 240. I think Fritz does get the job done for at least one set. I think he's losing. I'm not picking Fritz to win a big match like this, but I think he can do enough to, I'd say, put himself in a respectable position to win a set, and that's good enough for me. So give me Alcaraz to win, and both players win a set. I'll go with the over in the match as well. Total, I think, is arguably a bit short of 37.5, because Fritz, you can argue, with the great serving, in theory, even if he does not win a set, you could maybe even go over this. 36.5 is minus 130. I don't mind that. I think the over is the way to go for me in this one. But I will go with Fritz to win a set here. I think that Alcaraz will win. All that matters. And I think that Fritz can steal one out of the, in my opinion, four that we're going to get for this upcoming matchup. I see Cayetano mentioning, if I want to spice it up, Fritz to win the first set, Alcaraz to win the match. The thing is, looking at Alcaraz's matches so far, I know he lost the first set to Rublev in a tiebreak. I'm trying to think of how many first sets he's actually lost in the matches so far in the event. I know Fognini won the first set; it was close. Struff won the first set as well. So Alcaraz has actually been a pretty good first set player so far in the event. I think I would pick Fritz to win the second set personally, maybe, but I don't mind potentially going for a long shot angle if you want to go for it. But I think Fritz can once again do enough to not embarrass himself out there. Good enough for that one. I see Mel also mentioning that Caboli played well, and he wanted to give him a shout out. I agree. The Caboli played well. I looked like he was going to unravel a bit after that second set. Djokovic broke him, I think, 3 times in a row, entering the third set as well. And you figured, all right, Caboli's probably dead. And he wasn't. He fought. It didn't work out. But you know what? Caboli's a good player. I've been a fan of him for a while. I've been mentioning him on the podcast for years at this point. And yeah, he's good. Won 2 titles this year on clay. Pretty good on grass, despite having no resume at all. Entering the year, pretty good on hard court as well. Caboli's a solid player. I like him. And I think he should be, talent-wise, a top 15 guy at some point. Anyway, moving on to the next matchup taking place on Friday. This is the more competitive one based on the lines. Sinner against Djokovic. Now, for this one, Sinner's a big favorite, minus 230. Not as big of a favorite as Alcaraz, of course, but still looks pretty disrespectful to Djokovic, just based on where the numbers are located for the best Wimbledon player of all time, or at least the, I'd say, top 2 best Wimbledon players of all time, if you want to throw in Federer by comparison. Anyway, Sinner's minus 230, Djokovic plus 190, spreads minus 3.5 for Sinner, Djokovic plus 3.5 for the over-under. I see 40.5 games, 39.5 as well if you want to go for the juice at minus 125 on the over. Set spread, Sinner minus 2.5 sets is a plus 270. Djokovic to win a set is minus 375. Sinner minus 1.5 sets is minus 110. Djokovic to win 2 sets is minus 120. The over 3.5 sets minus 225. Under 3.5 sets is plus 170, and the over 4.5 sets is plus 220. Now, Sinner has owned the head-to-head, and it has been pretty lopsided, if we're being honest here. So, looking at the recent meetings, French Open, they faced off. It was close. Every set was close, but Sinner won all 3 sets. You saw them faced off in the exhibition in Saudi last year. Sinner won in 3. Beat him in Shanghai in straight sets. Beat him in the Australian Open last year in 4. Sinner probably could have won in straight sets there, and then he ended up winning in 4. Davis Cup, he had the phenomenal comeback, won in the 3rd set as well. So Sinner, if you want to include the Saudi one that happened for exhibition, Sinner's won 5 in a row against Djokovic. And you're looking at the meetings, and it feels like Sinner is just a really bad matchup for Djokovic because the firepower and the consistency can really neutralize a lot of Djokovic's elite, I'd say, skill sets, which involves defending and his movement, etc. And Sinner is just so pinpoint and so powerful that it feels like Djokovic is on the back foot in all the rallies, and I feel like it's going to be a problem for Djokovic once again here on grass. Now, Sinner, I think, is at his worst on grass, as far as I'm concerned. We saw in the French Open, beating Djokovic and going 5 against Alcaraz in that epic. He's actually very good on clay. For grass, we've yet to see Sinner be truly tested against an elite opponent before. I do think you're looking at Sinner, who beat Alcaraz on a grass a couple years ago before Alcaraz had the insane emergence into being a top 2 player in the world, basically. And Sinner was getting his ass kicked by Djokovic in Wimbledon a couple of times in the past. So the question is, do I think that Sinner should be this big of a favorite against Djokovic, who has been very good on grass by comparison of resumes? I do. I think Sinner is going to win. I think that Djokovic, I've said this before, I don't think he's good enough anymore to beat Sinner on a consistent basis unless there's an injury involved for Sinner. Now, we thought there was an injury with the elbow, and he was fine against Shelton. He looked very good. The issue with Djokovic is the fact that I don't think he can fully deal with the firepower and the accuracy of Sinner for what could be 4+ hours. Maybe Djokovic wins a set or 2, it goes deep. I think Sinner's better than Djokovic at this stage in their careers. It is what it is. I see CJ mentioning if there's any concern with Djokovic getting injured with him doing the splits at the end of that matchup against Kaboli. It doesn't help. I'll put it that way. I don't feel great about it. Do I think it's a big deal? Maybe not. But I think Djokovic, if he struggled that heavily, yes, the sun played a factor. But if he's not going to look that sharp in rallies against Kaboli, and Kaboli can hold his own and force Djokovic to a couple of long sets. We had a 7-5, a 7-6, and even a 6-4 at the end, courtesy of a really bad blown volley by Kaboli. 3 marathon sets against him on grass, and now you're against Sinner? Good luck to you. That's all I'm going to say. I love Djokovic. He's my favorite player of all time. I think he's the GOAT. Having said that, I think Sinner's better than him. And I've said this before. We saw this in the Australian Open. I think Djokovic can beat Alcaraz because Alcaraz's level can fluctuate pretty heavily. When he's really on, he's the best player in the world. But we've seen Alcaraz punt sets before. His level can be very erratic at times, and Djokovic can definitely find ways to beat Alcaraz if he's having an off game, or an off overall set, or an off match as a whole. For Sinner, he doesn't have that. His off match was against Dimitrov, and he got away with it. But besides that, he's been so consistent that I don't think Djokovic can actually match up against him. Now, you could argue on grass, maybe that'll help Djokovic with familiarity, but that'll just increase the firepower advantage that Sinner has. And the fact is, Sinner's a great defender as well. He's a better server than Djokovic, and I do think that his overall firepower is going to be too much for Djokovic to handle. So for me in this one, I got Sinner pretty convincingly. I don't want to say it's going to be a dud. I picked Sinner to basically kill Djokovic in the French Open, and it was close, but he won in 3 anyway. I see a similar story here. I think Joker might win a set. I don't see him winning 2. I think Sinner wins comfortably for the most part. And I think that Sinner minus 1.5 sets is the way to go at minus 110 or so. I think he's better than Djokovic. I've said this before, barring an injury or an extremely off match by Sinner, I don't see Djokovic beating him again. I think Sinner is a bad matchup for Djokovic at this stage in his career, and I think Sinner's going to win. Now, I do think Djokovic might maybe force a breaker here or there. Maybe he'll end up forcing a couple of break points to maybe look like he's going to steal a set. I just think Sinner's too good and too consistent for Djokovic right now. I think Sinner wins. I got nothing else to add. I think that Sinner wins in 4, if you want a prediction. 3 wouldn't totally shock me, to be honest, but I'll go 4. Joker's serve can be quite vulnerable at times, and I feel like Sinner, the one area that Joker's had a real problem against Sinner, he can't break this damn guy. Like Joker, if you go through the last couple matches in the head-to-head, he really never breaks him at all. You're looking at the matchups, although I see a question from Cayetano asking about Bet365 not having minus 1.5. You can take a player to not win 2 sets, So they have Joker not to win 2 sets. Same thing. So that's the same bet. It's phrased differently, but it is on Bet365. But we've seen in the past, Djokovic, as good of a returner that he is, he cannot break Sinner serve. And I think that's a problem. We'll see again here. Look up the actual meetings. Sinner is held regularly against Djokovic. And I think that'll happen again. In this one, give me Sinner. I'll go with 4. Could be 3, but I'll take 4 in this one. Hopefully, it's not Djokovic's last match ever in Wimbledon. He's hinted towards retirement at the end of the year. We'll see what happens. But I see Alcaraz and Sinner again in the Wimbledon final because they always face off against each other at this point in Grand Slam finals because they're too good. Simply put, they are too good at the sport compared to other people. And I do think that it's going to happen again here on Friday. It's going to wrap it up, though, for the actual match breakdowns. Now it's time for the lock and dog plays for the actual matches. Before we get into that, though, reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is Arnold Fantasy, because they're doing Best Mania happening all summer long, giving away $15 million in prizes, including $2 million for first place. No waiver wire, no arguments about trades. Best ball is the best way to play fantasy football. They also have Pick'em if you want to use Unrug that way. And a reminder, when you sign up for your account, use code SGPN to get a special pick in the first time that offer up to $1K in bonus cash on fantasy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm because they've had a brand new feature for a couple of weeks now, Power Trends, which are the best of the best, and Rhythm will give you their favorite model plays in the Power Trends section. So check it out if you want their best model plays. They're updated every day. They're only on Rhythm, and you can also use it for great data-backed picks. And for the updated Power Trends, Emily Power Trends have a win rate of 63% and an ROI of 4.5%. in their past 400 bets. They also have WNBA, if you want Power Trends there. 35-20 since launch, 63+% win rate. So there we go, 20.7% ROI. But a reminder, you can download the Rhythm app, check out the Power Trends, start being smarter. And we also have a great link for a free week trial with Rhythm. Check out the free 7-day trial by going to sportsgambling.com/rhythm, sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm to get your 7-day free trial. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finish going through the preview of the matches on Friday for the men's semis in Wimbledon. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. For the lock, I am going to go back to that Sinner match against Djokovic. I'll go with the Sinner to win the first set and the match prop at -116 on FanDuel. DraftKings at 120. I saw 116. I'll take it. Sinner has won 5 straight head-to-head meetings against Djokovic, and one common theme: he's won the first set in all 5 of those meetings. He's been a great starter. Djokovic has gotten off to a pretty slow start in the head-to-head meetings recently. I think Sinner will go up early. I think he'll be up often. I think he wins the matchup. Now, Joker has also not been good in the first sets recently. He has lost the first set in 2 straight matches, lost the first set to Caboli and to De Minaur. So not exactly a great, I'd say, collection of results for Djokovic recently in the first set. And I do think that Sinner, with the firepower, and Joker, whose serve has been vulnerable, at least in some aspects, in various points of matches, especially in the first set of matches. Do think Sinner's going to break him at least one time in the first set. Might be enough there. But Sinner, simply put, is a big favorite. I think it makes sense. I'll take the juice and cut it in half. Give me Sinner to win the first set and the match at -116 as my lock for the show. For my dog, I will go with the Alcaraz and Fritz match. Give me Alcaraz to win, but I will give Fritz a courtesy set. Think he can get there. Give me Alcaraz to win, and both players win a set at +130. Alcaraz 2-0 in the head-to-head against Fritz. There was a 7-5, though, in the second set of the most recent meeting. But you're looking at Alcaraz, who has not really been dominant per se. He's lost at least one set in 3 of his first 5 matches here. Do think he can fumble a set away to Fritz. And I do think Fritz, the truth is, he's been a serious friend of the podcast during the actual tournament. He not only won his quarter at 550, we've been taking him to win and both players win a set for multiple rounds, and Fritz has come through every time. Fritz seems to always find himself in a 4th or a 5th set. You know what? I'll pick him to do it again. Give me Fritz to win at least one set with Alcaraz winning at a good price for me. He's -520. I'll find a creative way to bet it instead. Give me Alcaraz to win. Both players win a set with the combo play at +130 on FanDuel. So once again, the plays here for the lock and dog for the men's semis. Lock's going to be on Sinner to win the first set and the match at -116. For the dog, give me Alcaraz to win the match and both players win a set at +130. It's going to wrap it up for the show. Once again, I did not quit on breaking down the women's Wimbledon matches. Unfortunately, I was busy, could not record an episode for the semis. We will be back for the final to preview the Anisimova against Swiatek final. So we will be back tomorrow to break down that matchup. So stay tuned for that. Till next time, I'm on Twitter, Reichel Radio. Also going to be recording a baseball pod in a little while. So if you want some baseball thoughts, check that out as well. Till next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.